But I had a lot of doubts, financially, doubts, can I do this, doubts myself, and I still do. I've came to the point where like invested so much into jiu-jitsu, and I saw what I was doing at other academies and how I was helping people, and everything came together. And how can you say no? And if you have a gift that you can share, and then they can share it with someone else, that's what I want out of life. So if one day I am no longer here, they're not going to remember Jose the black belt, they're going to remember 85.
Welcome to Only the Greatest Podcast. If you're feeling stuck and unsure what to do next in your fitness journey, we might be what you're looking for. My name is Philip. I own and operate OTG Fitness, which is a private personal training gym on the south side of Houston in Webster. I do this podcast every week with my best friend, Daryl. We've been friends since third grade and working out together ever since. Also joining us today will be Sean. He's the one that makes this podcast not only sound great, but look good as well. Our goal here is to help Houston make its way up the ladder of health and fitness. So if you're in the Houston area and ready to become the greatest version of yourself, be sure to like and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Here today with Professor Jose Llanas, 85 BJJ, Lee, the owner of Fitness Destination Houston, here with our second episode, I guess you could say, here on site. And Jose, the first thing that I wanted to ask you that I thought was kind of interesting in jiu-jitsu, they say Professor Llanas. How did that start? Where does that come from?
Yes. So the idea of professor, I believe it comes from, think about college degree, and you go through your education process where you're elementary, middle school, high school, and you go to college, right? And you earn a degree. And so in jiu-jitsu, obviously, you can't just become a black belt from one day to another, 1 year to another. It's a process, and you go through the same education process. I look at the blue belt, white belt level when you start. You're in elementary, right? You're starting, you're basing off. And throughout the years, really what happened, you start mastering your craft. Jiu-jitsu was not easy to become a black belt. It would take up to a decade of training. And so people would look at a person earning a black belt as a person that's sort of earning their bachelor degree in college, So it's not that we're necessarily more educated in school, professor. We're more like earning that title in the martial arts of jiu-jitsu as a professor of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, earlier I asked Lee about that too. I was like, "Hey, do you think? Can I was like, "Hey, can I ask that question?" Mm-hmm. And he's like, "Well, if you think this is 85 BJJ Academy,
yes, yes.
So we're here to learn a skill together."
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and that's what exactly we're trying to do here at 85. Besides being a martial arts program, we're really trying to be an educational program, not just for the kids, for the adults as well. Just like in fitness, it's about building habits, guiding people, teaching them, and going through their wins and losses and everything like that. And I think that's sort of where we kind of scale ourselves from.
Yeah. You said that when you're here, it's a overall education system. Can you touch on? I know you said quickly just now, teaching people how to win and lose, right, is kind of a big deal, right? Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. So winning or losing, I've never met anybody that's okay with losing, right? And really, like, that's your ego talking. And if you're saying that I'm okay with losing, then maybe you don't care about something, but there has to be something you care about, right? And you're eventually going to care about losing in that particular area. But I think I don't look at it as winning and losing. I think about learning, right? And what is winning or losing teaching you? I think everyone's very unique at their own situation. For us, losing, it's whenever we have a beginner coming in And what happens in jiu-jitsu, you're most likely going to get dominated, right? You're going to get pinned. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to be submitted. And you're going to start questioning yourself, right? And that's losing, right? But in reality, you are going through that process of learning a lot. One, about yourself, your ego, right? You can come back and do this again. And second, like the experience of losing. It's like, how did you lose? And then if you're smart about your training, you're going to come back and try to neglect that from beating you the same way, right? So I think it teaches you a lot. The value of winning, I think it's that, I mean, when you win, you're on top of everything, right? But this is the reality. If you go out and submit your teammates and you go home, you still have yourself to deal with, you know? So that part of winning, like, what is it teaching you, right? Maybe how to be strategic and beat someone. Or you go into a competition and you win. You compete on Saturday, Sunday you're excited, Monday comes, that wave, that energy is already down, right? So now you're dealing with yourself. So like, I don't focus so much on winning or losing. I just focus on where you're at and what are you trying to gain from your experience more than anything. And I try to guide students into that, you know, into really focusing on the idea of the experience. What is it teaching me? And that's kind of like the skill that I use.
Yeah, I know Lee and I have definitely had probably multiple conversations over the years. We've known each other like in business, winning and losing, like learning how to lose correctly, learning how to take that loss into a lesson. Because every time you go into a situation, you either win or you learn, right? Instead of losing. Everybody's heard that before, right? It's kind of cliche, but
yes. Don't get me wrong. Like I've lost where I'm shaking the guy's hand and smiles and like, good job, man. But inside of me, I'm like, I can't deal with this, right? And I did listen to the podcast episode you guys did and how you talked about you hate losing. And I was like, okay, like, is it really losing, or is there something about yourself that you don't like and that you feel losing is putting you in that position that is going to bring that person out or that side of you? I think that's something that will teach you a lot about yourself. You see what I'm saying? Like, I want to go back and ask you that, like, how do you feel about losing that you can't take it?
I don't know, man. That, I think, I don't know how deep into this we got on that particular episode, but for me, I feel like I should win. Winning should be the normal, is how I feel about it. Whether it's in business, whether it's in life, whether it's in a competition. For me, I want winning to be my normal. Bad. And when that doesn't happen, for a second, you kind of feel like a failure, you know? But in my opinion, as long as you don't let that linger, then it's not too bad. But in that, just like you said, you're shaking the guy's hand and you're doing it, you're being a good sport about the situation. But inside, you're just like, I can't wait to practice. Like, where did I mess up? And so as long as it doesn't hinder for too long, I don't see it as too bad of a negative.
But I think that's the key, right? How you said it, like, it might bother you and really get to you, but is it going to bring the best out of you to come back? And I think like a huge percentage of people, in jiu-jitsu and martial arts, they don't have the best results when they begin, or maybe they didn't have the best results in the first competitions. And now that kind of like puts them in a position of judging themselves like, well, I'm not good enough for this, right? So I think when you lose and have that mentality, that's a little bit more in that victimized mentality, and you come back and think about what you did wrong and try to reinforce that and make it better, man, you can lose 10 competitions in a row, but as long as you're aware that you're making progression and you're getting better, that's the key, I think.
Do you see your students do that sometimes, and then you have to have this conversation with them?
I seen my students, of course. There's a lot of people that have quit throughout years, either off of an experience of competition, which is scary. As an instructor, it's a little scary to guide somebody to do their first competition. Now, I'm not worried about it because I really feel like if we give them the best experience here, they're not going to want to leave training at 85, right? But yeah, of course, you deal with that. Honestly, I use a lot of times I use examples of guys that are fighting and competing at the highest level, right? I would say one guy that's probably one of the most dominant right now, his name is Roberto Jimenez, and it's a guy that lived here in Houston, grew up here, and I've seen him in competitions, and he wasn't the best kid competitor or wasn't winning all the competitions, and he was losing, plenty. But he kept training, and at 13 years old, he became sort of like a phenom. Started beating adults. Started at 15 years old, started beating black belts. And right now, he's one of the best competitors in the world. And I saw him going through his 10 losses in a row and overcoming all that. So you have to go through that, I think.
Yeah, it's very important to be able to overcome. It makes you stronger in the long run. Speaking of competitions, you're talking about this guy, Robert, right? Or Roberto. And then also yourself. These are very high-level athletes that you're talking about, right? What about the average person? Like, me, like, I guess you could consider me an athlete. I work out a lot, and I run and stuff like that. But in general, kind of like an average person, do you find that it's important for the regular person to stay competitive, like as an adult?
Of course. I think you should never lose that edge, right? Where you're trying to compete with yourself and who you were and what you're able to do, right? I think even when age hits our body hits a certain age, as long as you're realistic and you're still finding ways to challenge yourself, I tell my students, find ways to challenge yourself. And that challenge is going to help you, keep growing and keep going, doing what you're doing. But yeah, I think, I go through it as well. Everyone goes through it. But yeah, I think you got to challenge yourself. You got to find what you're trying to gain from every experience. Like I said, it's every experience. And yeah, I think it's about challenge yourself.
I think it's important to have a skill that you can hone over time.
Yeah.
And get better at that skill.
Yes. Well, I think about it like you're constantly challenging you, because like in jiu-jitsu, there's going to have different phases. You got the beginner phase, right? And then you got a blue belt, which is right after a white belt. You got a purple belt, brown belt, and a black belt. It's 5 belts only, but in a span of time, it can take a lot of years.
10 years, right?
It can take up to 8-10 years. We do have nowadays kids starting a little earlier, like kids who are starting at 5 years old. In 13 years, 15 years, they're adults, and they're literally black belts at 21 years old. You see, so you're getting a lot of that next generation, that evolution of athletes. But I think it's very important, for going back to your question about the average individual, to constantly keep challenging themselves. This is why you're not necessarily, when it comes to self-defense, you're not looking for a situation out there, right? You're not out there trying to fight someone. A situation is going to come to you when you less expect it, and you're going to have to react, and you're going to have to deal with that, right? And so one thing I tell my students here, and why is it important to train and constantly challenge yourself, is you wouldn't want to lose a fight in a self-defense situation, or not be able to defend your family because you ran out of cardio, or you just were not mentally tough in there to deal with that situation. And jiu-jitsu is critical thinking. It has to happen in a split of a second. You can't really just stay there and think. And that's why I think you got to keep your skills sharp.
Yeah, when I came in last time, Lee brought me in here and he kind of showed me around a little bit. And he was talking about how there's not a lot of striking, in jiu-jitsu, especially in the early stages, at least. Maybe like as you tenure through it. I'm not sure you can speak on this, but the main thing that I took away from what he told me was, at the beginning, I was like, there's no striking. Like, how if something were to happen, how am I going to defend? He's like, well, do you ever see yourself being the aggressor? And I was like, no. Well, think about that for a second. You're always going to be in a defense situation.
Yes.
Not in an offense situation. And for me, at least, that is very true and really struck true. And it sounds like that's kind of what you're saying, right?
Yes. I mean, at least for me, now that I've been doing martial arts for a long time, because it's not just jiu-jitsu. I've done other striking, done boxing and taekwondo. Even when I'm angry, I try to hold myself, because if or your skills, what you're able to do, right? And if anything, I'm going to defend myself. And it's funny you say that, because regardless of the years of training, doing fights and competition, I did had an incident not long ago where I had somebody try to attack me, and it really caught me by surprise. And even though I have all these years of training, I kind of was stuck in between. Do I defend myself? Do I hurt this guy? Like, what am I supposed to do? Thankfully, I was able to deal with the situation correctly, you know, and I was able to keep the guy away from me. I threw a couple kicks to his knees, a couple punches, kept him away from me, and I wasn't necessarily had to use any jiu-jitsu, right? But the main reason why I didn't want to get into jiu-jitsu because I felt like if I got a hold of him and I took him down, I felt like I was going to hurt him. So my idea was just use distance, kick him, keep him away. I hit him hard a couple of times, and the guy saw it, and he's like, okay, I had enough. He walked away, shook my hand, and walked away.
Did he really?
Yes. And I was shocked. I was frozen. Like, I was like, I reacted the correct way. I'm a good human being because, like, I literally could have hurt this guy, but I really didn't want to hurt the guy. I just did enough to not allow him to hurt me and for him to learn his lesson that day.
It's so interesting. It's almost like these years of physical training actually taught you more psychological training and mental training on how to deal with the situation.
It does.
You didn't even have to use you use some physical, but not nearly as much as you could have.
No, I mean, and I'll be honest, I can go back and tell you times where I've actually used just me talking to get away from situations like that, knowing that I probably can hurt the guy or the person, right?
But that's also the beauty of jiu-jitsu is putting yourself in that constant state of panic and then being able to address a problem and deal with it. And when you do that on a constant, when it is a random act, you're in a position to deal with it. So it's physical battles and mental battles, but you can't win any physical battles until you win the mental.
Yeah. So what you're saying is because he's been in these stressful situations so many times, he was able to collect himself
in an
versus just be super
situation.
hot-headed and go crazy,
and
start yelling.
Like you said earlier, is that, you know, many times he's talked himself out of these situations. And the reality is that, you know, you think someone with skills would be looking for this, but that's the exact opposite of how you feel. When you have the skills and you know you possess them, you don't want to use them unless you have to.
That was my next point I was going to ask is, do you think that it's the confidence you have? Because in the back of your mind, you know, if things really do get serious, I got no problems.
Well, there's a couple of things, right? I think in the position where I'm at, if I was an average individual and didn't, you know, was not the head professor at an academy and taught many kids, I think you might think a little bit different of yourself. One of the main things that I try to do is obviously control yourself because of the example that you lead. But another reason is because I have emotions like everyone else. I can lose, you know, my ability to control myself sometimes, right? And imagine getting yourself into a stage where now I got into a physical situation with somebody and I go a little bit beyond. Like, it's not trying to, like, I guess it's a confident of knowing what I can do. And like, if I really wanted to, I could take somebody down and probably, you know, put that person away in, you know, 2 minutes and I can get in trouble. Right. So now you got people that might, let's say somebody might not like me and they're going to poke at me because they know that if I hit them, they can come at me because of the skills that I have. Right. So it's a gray area where you have to be careful. You know, it's like, okay, you punch me. Okay, doors open for me to defend myself. But if that hasn't happened, I have to be very careful with what you tell me and how I react towards you. Because then that can be a bigger issue for me.
Is that something you've dealt with?
No, okay. Thankfully not. Every situation I've actually, since I've been doing martial arts, I've only been in one situation where I had somebody come at me and attack me, and I actually had to use my skills to defend myself. Everything else, thankfully I use competition as a way to let go of my feelings sometimes, and training. I do get to train with a lot of tough people where it's very humbling. You can go with somebody, you know, that's trying to strangle you and choke you out and pin you down. That takes all the animosity you have inside of you away. That's why a lot of individual people that come here and they might be going through their issues, not just stress. A lot of people go through anger and all those self-love things, you know. And I think when you come here and you train, you're physical with another human being, and this person you have a lot of respect for them, and you're trying to hurt each other. I mean, that's very humbling, and that's where that ego gets control a little bit.
Yeah, I think that a different part of you comes out when you're giving maximum physical effort. Mm-hmm. It's not like you don't change who you are.
Yes.
But something inside of you is different for those few minutes or whatever amount of time that you're actually pushing yourself to an extreme. And I think a lot of people don't even know their own capabilities because they don't get in these types of situations. They don't get in high enough, structured, right? In a structured setting where it's safe, but it is very important to get yourself into these situations where you are forced to actually be the greatest version of yourself when you're exhausted, mentally, physically.
Well, and I think that's why, we encourage our students to do competitions and challenge themselves, but also I think it's important to point out it's not mandatory to compete. Professor does a really good job of kind of catering everybody's martial arts journey based off of what their journey is set out to do and their goals. Everybody's different. Not right or wrong, but you may have someone coming in just wanting to find stress relief, find something to engage in. You have others that want to compete at a high level, but by being able to compete, it puts you in these stressful situations. In a controlled environment, going against somebody same size, same rank, same age, and when you go through that, you kind of get an idea of where you're at. And then that kind of gives you your baseline to build off of. Just like you ran your marathon, you ran your 5K, now you got a baseline, and you build off of that. So that's kind of those checkpoints through your martial arts journey. But it's not mandatory, but it's encouraged.
Yeah, and it's all about fulfilling your own potential.
Exactly.
In whatever manner you want it to be.
Yeah, but I'll tell you one thing. The problem is like you said earlier, I don't think people realize, one, what they're capable of doing. But the biggest issue that I see with people, especially with young people, they don't realize the potential they could have. And it's like, that's what bothers me the most, is when people don't see their own potential. You know what I mean? And don't try to excel at different stuff. I tell people all the time, you have the ability to learn different skills in your life. Life is not about one job, one skill, and that's it. You can learn as much as you want in life. Right. And then going back to what Lee said about everyone's different that comes in, and it's right. Everyone has their own experiences. We're all finding or trying to find something in here. That's the reason you're looking for martial arts. That's the reason people look for fitness, right? They're lacking something. And we come here and you realize, man, my friend over there who's pushing me, making me strong, challenging me, he's also getting better. So if I train with you, Phil, and when I train with Lee, if you watch a spar, you might think man, these guys might not want to lose against each other. But it's a little bit of the ego, but reality is I'm trying to choke him out so his skills can get better. He's trying to defend so my attack can get better. If that makes sense?
It does. It's just like in a situation, this happened to me one time. It always stands out to me, where sometimes people are like, you don't have to be so hard on someone. Well, if I really want to be the best that I can for that person and allow them to learn, I do need to be hard on them.
Yeah.
And then I'll always remember that time.
Yeah.
And when they were hard, because they were hard on me, it sucked in the moment. But in the long run, I look back and it actually helped me become the greatest version of myself.
Yes, of course, and every person that comes in has different abilities. You got an athletic young person that can do a lot of stuff. You got a mom, that wants to learn jiu-jitsu. They all have different goals. One of them is dreaming about making the UFC. The other one is just thinking about what they're going to make for dinner,
Two different goals.
That's where it changes.
Yeah.
But no, when the person comes in, everyone has a unique journey and everyone's different, and you don't compare yourself to the guy that's trying to make it to UFC, and you don't compare yourself to the housewife. You compare it to where you're at, right, and what you're able to do. We take that athletic guy and we find what he's good at, and we make him stronger at it. We find his weaknesses and we exploit him, and we take that away and we try to make a fighter for what he wants. We take this mom over here that wants to just learn self-defense. We show her how to balance first. We show her how to fall. We show her that she can belong in here because she's gonna advance differently, right? And I love this idea that I talk with my students, my kid students, when they come in, because imagine for an adult, they're coming in, they don't like the idea of being thrown around, right? So they don't come back. Now imagine you being a kid. You have no say so. Your parents bring you here, right? So one of the things that I tell them is that metaphors or ideas that we look at is that when you come here, you're fragile, right? And my job is not to teach and make this fragile person a black belt. My job is to make you into that durable person that can stand anything, and you're gonna become a black belt. So when they come here, they're glass, right? Cup of glass, and if they fall, they're gonna shatter everywhere. And I tell them that with training, that tough day you came and you were getting smashed and you're on the bottom and you couldn't escape and you had a couple of tears and a couple of little, pain here and there, that's turning that cup into a plastic cup. So that is gonna become durable, and he falls off to the ground, is gonna bounce off right again. So you fall 5 times, you're gonna bounce off 6 times, right? That's what I try to make the average person, into that durable cup that then they can do a competition. And then you're talking about, well, what about the average person? Well, you got to think that I was an average person at one point. Roberto Jimenez was an average kid at one point. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They became that super athlete or that super jiu-jitsu person.
What percentage of your students compete?
Very small.
Yeah.
Small percentage. Because like he said, you want that to be a very organic thing for them to do. And so what I do with students are brand new. I give them micro goals. They don't know what they want. A lot of people come to jiu-jitsu, they want to learn self-defense, but in reality, they don't know what they're capable of. They don't know their potential. They don't know what they want. So you got to show them, right? So we start with micro goals, and we have an essential program. I don't have a beginners or fundamental program. I call it essentials, because I believe the moves that you work as a beginner are the same moves that you're going to be working as a black belt. They're just defined as a black belt. They're sharp. They're black belt level moves, right? And so we started with the essential program. We start the person twice a week, so their body can ease into the training. We do very minimum or no sparring at all from the beginning. Now, I like to encourage people to spar eventually, because you have to learn how to execute the moves when somebody is resisting you. Right? That's why I think is important. And so you can learn how to defend yourself. And then from there, we'll move on into a higher program called leadership, where now that glass is durable. Now they can train more. They can go to competitions, and so that's a little bit smaller percentage, and it's seasonal too. So one person might want to compete now, the other person is like, yeah, I got stuff going on with my family. I want to compete in June, or I got to compete in December. Mm-hmm. So that's a small percentage though.
Yeah, because you've been speaking a lot about competitions, and then also a lot about the average person. Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming you, as a professor, get just as much fulfillment helping mom learn how to defend herself as helping UFC dreamer go to competition. Is that accurate? Or
I would incline more to helping the average person, the mom, the kid.
Even more to them.
Yes, the kid that falls on himself. He doesn't have the greatest balance, and teach him to defend himself. And seeing those people go through a transformation, it's a lot more satisfying than obviously seeing an athletic young person. You sort of expect that, right? Pursue their dream and make it maybe one day if they work hard. But you never see a mom choking out some average guy on the mats, right? So I think it's a little bit more satisfying, because that's what true life is. The championship, making the UFC, that's just part of the sport, part of the your journey of trying to be a fighter. I think what's for me that brings more, it's seeing people excel at life in that way.
Well, and I think to even reinforce that, like a lot of your students that have progressed the most, especially the younger ones, were not the athletic freaks, not the phenoms. Yeah. What they were the resilient ones, the ones that he molded into that plastic cup that kept coming back. And they would come in and lose every tournament. Then they would not lose as bad. Then they would start to win a few matches. And then before you know it, they're winning all the, double golds here. And it's the baseline wasn't their athleticism or their knowledge. It was their resilience. And if you have that and you can build on that, then you can become a champion. You can go to competitions. But if you don't have the resilience, it doesn't matter your athleticism. It doesn't matter how much you know.
The gap from their beginning skills to today is much larger probably than the natural athlete that came in. Like, because a lot of times, athletes are often born. There's a genetic piece to this whole thing. Yeah. So it's like you said, you almost expect them to excel, but to see mom maybe choking out dad, I don't know if that's something that happens sometimes.
We call it domestic violence.
Yeah. So, seeing situations like that where now she leaves here with just like a different strut in her walk, the way that she feels every day, she feels a little bit safer and a little bit better about herself. Mm-hmm. Those are the types of feelings that I'm assuming are just irreplaceable.
Yes, of course. I mean, right now, the greatest no-gi grappler, his name is Gordon Ryan, and right now he's very jacked and built, right? But throughout his journey, he's not the fastest. He's not the most athletic. He's very calculated, slow. Once he gets you in a position, he's gonna finish you. You know what I mean? So that's the perfect example. I think can an athlete have an advantage? Of course. Right? They definitely have an advantage, but I don't think that's really what defines them. I think what also happens with somebody who's an athlete can accomplish things easier is they don't learn how to persevere as much as the other person. And I think when you learn to persevere, it's like there's nothing that's going to kill you and stop you.
Yeah, there's I'll keep it short, but a little story that I often think of in situations like this. When I was in high school and really growing up my whole life, I played baseball for the most part.
Okay.
And there was a kid that he was a year younger than me. This guy was above and beyond anyone else. Not even close. Like, no, he threw 10 miles an hour faster, ran a second faster, hit the ball 100 feet further. There was just no competing with this kid. And he ended up not making it.
Well, I was going to say, was he ever the first one at practice or the last one to leave?
No.
Did he never miss a practice?
Missed practice.
Talent carry him.
Point.
Yeah.
That's it's almost a detriment when you have this physical ability because you don't face what an average person faces on a regular. And facing that, I think, is where the value comes from, not so much your ability per se.
Yeah.
Because you can build the ability by facing this, but, you can't apply your ability without having the mental fortitude.
Yeah, you need to build adversity. You need to learn to lose.
Well, I think the challenge is, like we were talking about earlier, is showing them that they can, they have more potential regardless of their losses, that they can persevere. That is the challenge with the kid that's not very athletic, that struggles, is to keep him coming back, keep that person coming back. Man, I believe that if you do something long enough, you're eventually going to get over the hump and do well. And it's just people, we want fast results. We want everything to come quick and fast. But I think that's where talent doesn't appreciate it, and you're going to take stuff for granted.
How do we get over that hump though? Like why is the hump, why is it so big? Why is it so far away? Like how do we get over that?
I think sometimes we don't create realistic goals that can show us our progression regardless, right? And so we have this, and this happens with our students, and sometimes it's tricky because I make them give me their goals at the end of the year for the next year, right? So I know as a coach, and now I use that to pressure them. I'm like, hey, come on, man, you're not in class. You say you want to win a gold medal. How you're going to do this? But regardless, you start creating smaller goals that are realistic. So for example, you start with your daily goals. Like, man, I want to wake up a certain time. I want to be able to do this. I want to exercise. You have to have micro goals. One of the main reasons why people don't make it to jiu-jitsu and get over their hump is because 90 minutes before they have to go train, 90 minutes before they have to go work out, before they have to do something very important is when their brain starts telling, no, you shouldn't go. No, that's the biggest problem. It's not here. It's not here. You have to get over your own hump at home. And it's right before you're making that decision to keep coming back. You see, I think if people are aware of that, then they can find their own little demons and fight that, a little bit better.
Yeah, I think one of the most dangerous things is when someone does that and then they justify that it's true and that it's okay.
Yes.
That's, in my opinion, when it gets dangerous.
We always say you never regret coming to class. You always regret not coming. You never come to class, maybe I shouldn't have came, darn. Mm-hmm. you sit at home, you don't come to class, and that's when you have that regret. So it's getting over that hump, that mental hump. Overcoming that is the challenge we all have. But I think if we break it down to the micro goals like we do, is that, okay, I just got to show up today. If I just show up today, I'm going to learn jiu-jitsu. I'm going to get better. Well, as I get better, I'm going to progress. Then maybe I want to compete. So it all starts with that micro goal. If I just say I want to do jiu-jitsu and compete, well, then you still have to have a path to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oftentimes we look at the big picture like it's so big, or someone walks in and they look at you and they see you fight, and they want that so bad.
Exactly.
And they have a really hard time understanding that it took you 10 years just to get that black belt, or it took you 15 years. And we think in such short time frames these days. Yeah. Like you were asking earlier, like, why did we start a podcast? And, it's because nothing, like I said fitness in general, fitness specifically, couldn't be taught in 60 seconds. It takes at least 60 minutes to get a point across. And then Lee spoke up and said, well, that's really anything. And it is true, because nothing can get, fully across in a short amount of time.
Yes. And you said it perfectly, right? Like everything starts with a why. Like if you start with a why, like if you focus on the why of things, and you're going to find a lot of answers, even your own answers, right? And like, why are we doing this? You know what I mean? There's a lot of reasons. I think one of the things about me what people overlook is, like you said, they didn't see a lot of my struggles and they focus on your success. It's like that meme of that glacier iceberg, right? Where it's like they only see your success here, but they don't see like all the injuries. They don't see the aches at night. They don't see like the struggle,
years of blood, sweat.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, like I am so grateful that I have this lifestyle, because I am fulfilling my dream of continuing my skills. Don't get me wrong, everyone is has their own life and stuff, but when I see people out there in doing a job that they hate, in industry that's rough and they don't like, they're really suffering more, and I'm like, okay, this is all just suffering because I'm doing what I love. You see what I'm saying? And now obviously I get to do this full time now, but there was a point where I had a job, I had responsibilities, I had everything that an average person that comes through the door has, and I got all the way to like my purple belt with responsibilities. I would drive an hour to make it. I would bring my gi with me. I would go to my family member's house or shower real quick so I can make class. I would leave home at 8 a.m. I'll get home at 10 p.m. But I love what I was doing because I was working and then I was training jiu-jitsu, right? But I was passionate, man. I love what I did. It's two things you can do. You can accomplish anything. It's when especially they're kids, right? And if you get them to like something and you get them to pay attention, an adult is the same way. Mm-hmm. An adult is a kid still, you know what I mean? But yeah, I've struggled the same way, and now because of the struggle and I persevered through that, I had opportunities to one day start teaching, and that's how we're here now.
What's the trick to getting them to pay attention? Kid or adult?
Yeah, I was say which one.
So each one, both.
Like if you watch my kids' classes, like I'm mellow with them, but they respect me. But once they know that they start getting a little bit out of line, then that, all right, guys, that voice, that tone of voice comes out, like, all right, they know now they'll get engaged, right? I think it's a trust and understanding. It's not just like you have to listen to me because I'm your instructor. They learn to trust you, and they pay attention to because that's what's good for them. They're supposed to do that, not because you're forcing them to do that. Second, you have to make it sort of playful, yet in a disciplined way. You see what I'm saying? You cannot teach martial arts to a kid, jiu-jitsu, especially jiu-jitsu, to a 4-year-old kid, without making it, fun. Playful in a way, while you're teaching them character development skills, leadership skills, how to, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, all those little things that somebody out in the store will see, like, oh, that kid is well behaved. Well, they get that from here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But also, I think you implement a standard, and when it gets to it where he does have to correct, it will get to that point. But a lot of times they're self-correcting based off of the standard. So some of the other kids will correct them before we have to get to them. So once you get to that standard and hold that bar, it's very rare that we have to interject.
Yeah, it's very helpful as a coach
attention.
also.
But to get that culture, it took a lot of time. But it was worth investing that time into the culture because it's almost self-correcting now.
Yeah. We use a couple strategies for the kids, like one that's very simple. I learned this from my professor. I used to teach at his academy, ran the kids program there for years. So he taught me a lot. He has mentors that has taught him a lot. And one of the 4 basic things that we use, we talk about the 4 laws of concentration. And like, all right, we make it serious. Like 4 laws of concentration. All right, team. And I don't call them guys or, hey, fellas, I'm team unity, right? And so we talked about we have to focus our eyes. And like, guys, we have to focus our eyes. You have to make sure you're paying attention, looking at who's talking. Is either me here or your parents at home, in school, your teachers, anybody's talking to you, you have to make eye contact. That's one rule they have to have on the mats. And then the second rule is focus your ears. Because you might be looking at me, but you're not really listening to me. You have to make sure you're listening to what I'm saying. The third one is focus your body. So now they're standing in a certain posture. Now you got their eyes, their ears. And you notice we're making it like a little contest. Who's the best black belt that can stand tall? And then the last one, focus your mind. Because if you focus your eyes, focus your ears, focus your body, your mind is going to be in tune with what we're going to learn. And just that little brief talk like that gets them, okay. And then, boom. That once you get a kid to pay attention, it's only going to last for so long, right? You make something out of it, and then you renew that. When you start losing control, you got to come back to it.
Is it similar with adults, or do you have a different
We don't
strategy?
make them point to their eyes.
Yeah,
ears,
we don't, but I will call you out if you're an adult laying down on the mats like that, of course. But adults have a tendency, they don't want to be an embarrassment on the mats, right?
Yeah,
They're like,
I can
no,
see
I have
that.
to, so they're, for the most part, in the best behavior. The issue with adults, I think, is more, for the most part, sometimes it might be physicality when they start sparring because they don't know how to control themselves, and you might get a strong, big person going to, try not to match them with a smaller person because that can potentially happen, a mismatch here and there. I think that's the biggest concern with them.
Yeah, definitely something that I see a lot of in personal training is just people's lack of, I call it body awareness. I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Like sometimes I got to like, all right, when we're doing a deadlift, we're going to get our hips back and like they move sideways or something, So it's just kind of one of those things, teaching them being aware of their body, how it moves, why it moves this way, what muscles are working.
Yeah, I think
stuff like that.
It's how they learn. Right? Everyone learns different. So you got people that are, you have to literally grab their arm and move it. Oh, okay, I got it. You got people that are like, I don't understand it. You show them. Can you just do it to me? And like, okay, I got it.
Yeah, at our gym we call it the 2-finger method. So when you need to touch someone, we take the 2-finger approach.
Tactile.
Yeah. So and then like especially if it's a male, like I'll get and I'll touch their hip and like move it backwards.
Yeah.
Right. Things like that can be really helpful.
Yeah, especially with the kids. You have to take the initiative with them. That's the biggest thing that I work with the assistant coaches. Like, you cannot be pointing the finger to a kid and telling them, not even an adult, because an adult's confused, man. They're upside down, like, move your right arm. I'm like, well, which is my right arm?
Sure.
With the kid, you really got to guide them. Once you guide the kid a couple of times and you make it a fun little, I call it like, we're going to go from point A to point B. You just simplify everything. Like, you did a little bit of jiu-jitsu with Lee, right? And we have the guard where you put a person in between your legs, and that guard comes from you defending yourself. That's why you get somebody in the guard. It's not, I didn't put you in a guard because I'm going to armbar you. No, arm bars came later on with the ability to find them there. The idea of putting you in a close guard is that I'm going to grab you so you can't punch me and hit me. So, I know you mentioned something about there's no punches, and I'm gonna touch back a little bit on the point system of jiu-jitsu and where it comes from. But going back to the other point, right? Sometimes, like, you do have, a person that you're gonna have to guide a little bit more than the other one, just because of how they learn. And so the point system in jiu-jitsu, there's no striking, right? You were talking about earlier. There's no striking. So there is MMA, like the UFC, when you go into the ground and you do punching. But based on my understanding, the way the point system for jiu-jitsu for competition comes from is most dominant positions that get the most points, right? And so we're talking about the mount right now. So if I go on Coach Lee and I go to the mount position, I pass your guard, right? And I go to the mount position, I get 4 points. But why do you get 4 points for that? Is because if I go past your legs, I have more ability to strike, to do striking and damage to you. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So even though there's no striking in jiu-jitsu, the point system is based on if you get to a more dominant position where you can do the most striking from, that's where you're going to get the most points from. You see what I'm saying? So if I take you down, now I can do more striking on you, right? So I get 2 points. If I pass your guard, because you use your guard to defend yourself so I can't punch you, if I pass your guard, I get 3 points because I'm past your guard, your legs. Now I can create more damage to you. And then from there, I can go to the mount position and I can do a lot more damage. And that's why that's the most dominant position in jiu-jitsu. But the point system, even though there's no striking in jiu-jitsu, comes from the ability that you have to do striking on someone and how dominant you are.
Yeah, and you were talking about like where the point system comes from and why these things are important. Can we talk about where jiu-jitsu as a whole comes from? Like, where did it... Lee gave me a quick explanation last time when I was here, but I'd be curious of your take and your knowledge on that.
Man, like, jiu-jitsu's... The way I think about it is, like, jiu-jitsu's still going through an evolution, right? You had, obviously, the Gracies, the most popular family of jiu-jitsu. And... based on where I know the idea of jiu-jitsu comes from, it's from judo. Judo is a Japanese martial arts based on throwing people. Their instructor was a judoka, came from judoka art, right? And so Helio and Carlos Gracie, what they did, they took his teachings on the ground and what they thought, they thought of idea of creating and expanding it, making it, better, more efficient. And so their way of proving that it was efficient, you're fighting other fighters or other styles, right? So you go fight a judoka, you go fight somebody, the Gracies were famous for going to the beach and starting fights with other people and fighting there. And their idea was to show that jiu-jitsu was the most dominant martial art. Right. And then eventually the idea of fighting in the UFC came along. And that's when the UFC started. And what they did, they brought in different styles. They have boxing, they had wrestling, they had jiu-jitsu. They have different forms of styles of fighting. And they put them in an octagon to fight and to see which style is the most dominant. And that's when, the UFC won a couple of tournaments of those. So then jiu-jitsu started becoming a little bit more popular. That's when I first saw it and I was interested in doing it, but I was still a teenager. So I didn't have it. I was not able to do it yet. And there was no jiu-jitsu around back then. So anyhow, and then from there, the Gracies moved to America. They started coming to America a lot more, founding schools. And there's a guy named Carlos Machado that was established in Dallas first. And so then you got like my instructor was one of the first black belts in Houston. He would travel to Dallas to train with him because he was one of the only black belt in Texas. And then from there, that the links of, schools started growing. My instructor eventually opened his schools. More black belts started growing. You had guys like very popular fighters like Lobato in Oklahoma who were part of that generation. Guy Tim Creditor from Louisiana who fought in the UFC, one of the first black belts from over there. Travis Took, my instructor here in Houston, was one of the first black belts in Texas. And so eventually those guys started growing and all the links of jiu-jitsu grew. And that's when it became more of a sport. Sport, and that's people started teaching more on to please the customer. Back in the day, it was a little bit harsh. I think when you were going to a jiu-jitsu school, you're going to be treated not kindly But because back in the day, the idea was to prove you how dominant the sport was. There was no like customer service in here. Philip, you're going to try it out. We're going to put you with that black belt. That black belt is going to submit you and smash you 20 times. And we thought, or people thought, that was going to have a great effect. And you're like, wow, this is fantastic. I'm going to come back, right? But in reality, people were not coming back.
Maybe maybe the thought process was, I want to show them how weak they are. And so they'll be motivated to get stronger. Yeah, and it has the opposite effect.
I think it's a combination of both. Yeah. I want to show them how weak they are, how strong I am, how they can become like me.
Yeah.
But there wasn't no build them up like there is now. You know, like I have to take care of you because you're my customer. If I don't have you, my students don't have teammates, don't have training partners, right? We don't have an academy here.
Well, it's very similar in the fitness world. Like back until recently, well, now fitness is getting more trendy, right? And fitness has been trendy for the past 5 to 10 years. It really, past 5 years, even more, but 10-ish or so, a little longer with the group classes and stuff like that. Kind of fitness got trendy a few years ago. But before that, it was very much like hardcore. If you lifted weights, you were a bodybuilder, you were not normal. But now we see, because of customer service and also because of all the health benefits are coming out, it's more normal for the average person, to lift weights.
There was more a male dominant activity.
Yeah, because back in the day, women just did plyometrics and group fitness, But now we know that lifting weights is good for everyone.
Yeah.
Right, and it's more open to everyone. There are businesses that cater to different types of people to make people feel more comfortable. But we all know that it's good. And speaking of the average person, you mentioned in the UFC, the goal was to take people of different modalities of fighting and put them against each other, right? And I'm sure that these athletes, they have a specialty, maybe they have a little bit of a blend, but for the average person, if you were just talking to me, do you think that it's better for me to do jiu-jitsu and get really good at it and only do this one thing? Or do you think it's a good idea to do a blend of different martial arts?
I think if you're fairly new, just starting, no experience at all, I think you should focus on building a little bit of your foundation in jiu-jitsu. I seen people, start jiu-jitsu not long after that, maybe start some striking. I think I would recommend doing some striking here and there as well. But I would focus a lot more on building the foundation on jiu-jitsu. Now, don't get me wrong, you can do anything, but the ability that your body has, can he train 3-4 times a week, or can you only give it, because jiu-jitsu, it can be tough on you as you train a little bit more, right? That wear and tear, the recovery is a little tougher, so you don't hit that burnout stage so early. I would focus primarily on jiu-jitsu.
And when you started, you said you did different things before, right? Can you speak on that a little bit? Why did you get in martial arts in the beginning, maybe when you were very young? What did you do, and how did it progress?
I got into martial arts because I like fighting in general. And I like fighting because I realized that I can defend myself. In third grade, I one time realized I can defend myself. I got somebody who was beating me up, and I got angry, and I defended myself. And I was like, man, fighting is kind of fun, right? And so I always pursue it. And so in middle school, I went and signed up by myself, Taekwondo. And then 7th grade, 8th grade, I did boxing, George Foreman Youth Center in Houston. So I pursued those things on my own because I like fighting. But then the idea of I wanted to be a fighter grew. Like, man, I want to fight in front of people. Like, I don't know what it is. It's some calling, Maybe it's my lifestyle. I just need to do it. And so I wanted to do jiu-jitsu because I thought I was a striker, and I didn't want people taking me down. So that's when I found jiu-jitsu. But I came from a background more of boxing and striking, and I started jiu-jitsu, and I just fell in love with it. I fought MMA. I pursued it a little bit. I did it, and it just wasn't my thing. I think jiu-jitsu just showed me a different face that I had never seen, and I stuck to it.
Yeah. And when you were younger, were you good? Or were you like one of those kind of natural athletes, or?
I think you're only good based on what you know and what you're supposed to, right? So, I mean, when you're shadow boxing in front of the mirror all
You've never
day,
lost.
you're great.
You're undefeated.
You're great. Right? Nobody's
point.
beat me before.
That's a great point.
But then when you start going into like a training room and seeing like at least when I was doing boxing and I was still a kid, I'm seeing, you know, more of the up and coming guys fighting and you know, ripped and hitting the bag. I'm like, oh crap, that's a different level. So I've always had respect for that, you know.
Yeah. And then, so you've been doing jiu-jitsu for how long now specifically?
I started when I was 21. That's how I remember. 21. I'm 39 now.
Okay.
So about 18 years.
18
right?
years.
Yeah.
Wow. And it took you right around that 10-year mark to do your first black belt?
No, I did get it a little bit sooner than the average person because I had a unique opportunity. Like I mentioned earlier, after purple belt, I was able to when I was managing a gym, a jiu-jitsu academy place, and I couldn't work my daytime job no more. It was too much. So my instructor hired me full-time to run the academy. And so that's when I was able to train full-time. So all I did was teach, run the academy, and train full-time. So I think that really gives you a big advantage. So it took me less than 90 years.
Okay.
Took me about 8 years and 10 months around there. If I look at it more the exact numbers. And when I got it, it was a little bit more above average. Now you're getting people that are getting it in 7-6 years because they're going into jiu-jitsu and just training full time.
Is it, are there tests? How does that work? How do you advance?
I think it's based on your instructor and based on your expectations. I think you set your own expectations. And what do I mean? Like, if you come in and you never want to compete and pursue any of that, I'm going to go based on your expectations. Now, don't get me wrong. A blue belt is a blue belt, right? So when it's time for you to get your blue belt, you're going to get your blue belt. But I'm not going to have the same expectation as this kid who says, hey, I want to be a world champion, right? I'm going to train 3-4 times a day, you know, I want to do all this stuff. Like that's going to be a little bit different expectation. So, you know, I can only ask you to come 3 times a week. This kid, I want you to be here 6 times a week. You know what I mean? So you're going to gauge it on that. And so the reason I say that is I look at my particular journey. When I was a purple belt, I was a purple belt for almost 4 years, just at one belt. And so imagine trying to renew your goals and being at a belt for 4 years. I wanted to compete at the highest level. I got to compete in the world championships and major tournaments, to travel California, New York. You know, I had sponsors that were helping me. So my instructor had, you know, I guess higher standards than the average purple belt that was training at the gym. You see what I'm saying? So he gave me an opportunity to try to have a shot to win certain things, even though maybe at the skill set that I had, I probably could have been the next belt already.
Was that frustrating for you?
I wouldn't say frustrating. I think it was more like you got caught up. I got caught up with like other people were saying. Because, like, for example, like, you go and submit someone, I mean, you're really good, dude. Or you submit somebody with a higher belt, like, oh, man, you should be a brown belt already, right? And stuff like that starts getting into your head. But I think, like, if you focus on yourself, like, on what you want to accomplish and what you know, translate it to your instructor, you're going to find the answer in there. I didn't know exactly what my instructor wanted from me. Into later on, I found out, and that was it. He wanted me to have the best chance I have to win a major tournament. So he had me competing there and helped me there a little longer so I can be the best purple belt I could be, right? If it wasn't for that, yeah, I could have probably promoted him to brown belt, right? So I understood what he wanted from me. I think if you understood what you want based on your expectations and what your instructor is asking you to do, and you look for that, it should not be frustrating.
I also think he understood what you wanted out of jiu-jitsu.
Exactly. That's what I mean.
That was what he catered his goal. Once again, that individualized journey is kind of, and that's where a good professor comes in, is identifying that for each person. Because if you're just an academy that wants to make a bunch of killer competitors, well, you know, that's fine. But, you know, is that really are you really changing things?
Are you really doing the best possible service for this person that you could?
Are you really doing the art justice?
Yeah, exactly. Or are you just giving them what they want, right? Which are often different things. To help someone,
you have to balance.
Yes.
It's just like fitness.
To help someone really fulfill their potential, they're not always going to get the good news.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you see yourself using that technique now as a professor yourself, as similar to he did with you?
Yeah. I'm already doing it. Like, Coach Bo, one of the purple belts here, hey, I can promote you to brown belt. You've been training long enough. Man, I want you to do specific things. I want you to do this. And this is why. Because you're going to move to a higher belt. That means people are going to expect higher of you. You have to make sure you reach your peak, your best at that belt. And I'm not saying go out and win a competition, but make sure that you are training legitimate for that, promotion. Make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do to improve. Now, you can come here, Phil, and train every day of the week and go through the motions and not improve. Or you can come here with goals. This is what I'm working on. This is what I'm doing. And if I see that on students, I see a student staying after 10 minutes training over there, trying to figure out what he was doing wrong. Those are the things that I'm looking for. I'm not looking for you to start beating everyone necessarily. Now, Phil, if you don't want to compete, but you're really good, I'm gonna bring the best out of you, so that when you get to a purple belt level and this purple belt competitor comes in and trains with us and he trains with you, he doesn't know who you are. He don't compete. But then he goes with you and you start smashing him. That happens. That's true, man. Don't think that the average person cannot compete and train with the competitor, because they do. Who you think is the main training partners to competitors is the average Joe. The average Joe has skills because they've been coming in for years and years and years. I have a student, he just recently got his black belt. His name is Jorge Maldonado. He's a music instructor, actually. And I signed him up. First day, came to my classes, and now my professor gave him his black belt. And if you train with him, he's solid, man. He's solid, a solid guy. But if you would have trained with him when he was a white belt, he's like, this guy's going to be on the slow train. But he made it, and he's good.
So you really are a professor, viewing your students at these different stages, right? And you're keeping your eyes on them, not to say like, they're adults, they're not children, but it's like watching a child develop.
Yeah, it is.
It is over time.
Yeah. And, I have students that are older than me, and like they have so much respect, and the way they direct to you, it's like, man, it's so satisfying that they're really listening to you and trying to do the right thing. But yeah, you are. And one thing we have here, we have technique, right? We do techniques, and we have a curriculum that we follow. And I remember when we first opened the academy, they were like, well, can you make a curriculum? I was like, yeah, I'll make a curriculum, but that curriculum is going to change in 3 months. I was like, well, why is it going to change? Because our students are going to change. So I have to constantly change every week what we're going to learn next week, and basing on what we did last week, and basing on where you're at, Phil. If this student understood this part, this student understood, now we can add more stuff. And that's why it's a curriculum that we rotate.
Does every academy have a single professor? Is that kind of how the structure works within jiu-jitsu academies? Can there be multiple? Do you have to be a black belt to be a professor? Like, how does that work?
I mean, you can be an instructor as a blue belt, okay, as long as you're a good instructor and you have, good intentions, you're passionate about what you're doing. You don't have to teach the best technique, the most flashy and the best technique. As long as you have that connection with your student, you're able to teach them something and they're going to improve, you can do that. Nowadays, though, because a lot of people started as lower belts teaching. I started as a purple belt. I was managing an academy, and I was a head instructor as a purple belt. That's the middle of the belts there. Okay. I have a friend who opened his academy as a blue belt back in the day. But nowadays, if you go into an academy, you should at least have a brown belt or a black belt leading the school, because times have changed. So usually you do have one head instructor, but you might have other black belts in there. Like in here, we have a couple black belts that train with us, but I am like the one that manages the program.
But you still create the program week in, week out. You're the one, top down view, checking out what's going on, make sure everyone's doing the things.
Now, other academies have smaller or bigger operations, right? Our operation is eventually going to grow. The reason I say that, the school where I'm coming from, Team Took, I was leading his kids program. So he gives me an overview of the curriculum, but I detail the curriculum because I'm the one that knows the students, and I would detail it based on the testing, how we did it. So I detail the curriculum. He has a striking coach. That instructing coach details his curriculum. I'm sure it's the same thing. Like if you're a coach in a fitness gym and you have to run a class, so you have to build your class.
Right.
So that's the power we had. In here, though, I do manage everything. And I do have one coach who takes what I give him, and he'll detail the class to how he teaches.
Okay.
So coaches are referred to brown belt and under that assist, but also a big part of your jiu-jitsu journey, especially once you hit blue belt, is to help teach.
Yeah.
And when you can identify, troubleshoot techniques, not only do you have to understand it inside out, but also how to troubleshoot and fix it, helps you on your journey. So this perpetual of you helping others to help yourself is a symbiotic relationship that is like the foundation.
Yeah,
of jiu-jitsu.
where else they use that is in yoga. Yoga studios do very similar. When a student
reaches a certain level, they start to assist.
They really want them to be assisting, because coaching something will open your own eyes to your own issues, improvements, strategies.
That starts at our kid level. We have kid assistants assisting in the little champions, and we have that structure starts at the very entry level. But is a very important part of the jiu-jitsu journey.
Oh, yeah, for sure, because you have to be able to get on someone's level and help them, right, if you really want to build that communication and that teamwork. That
and, like Coach Lee said, it really sharpens your skills as well. Puts you in the pressure, like, man, I got to tell this person the right information, right? And it just creates this understanding between students. I mean, everybody in jiu-jitsu is so helpful.
Yeah.
And there's no such thing as like, I can't teach people my technique, because you don't really care. Like, I'll do a move on someone and like, I'll teach them, hey, I'll do this, because I want you to try to stop me. I want you to learn this.
Yeah, there's no like, no, I can't teach him this technique.
No.
This is mine.
It's actually the opposite. We'll go around, and afterwards he's like, you're doing this. Every time you do this, I can do that, and it stops you. So he's actually pointing out the mistakes I'm making to try to beat him.
Yeah. You want people to be.
He is explaining to me where I'm messing up to beat him.
That's right. You want someone to beat you. You're not holding techniques. You're not hiding anything. You're like, I really want you to be able to beat me.
I want my students to legitimately beat me.
Yeah.
That's really going to be the main thing. I know it's going to hurt me, but I want them to beat me. But with that said, nobody likes to lose. I'm very competitive, and they're going to have to work a little bit more for that, all right? I'm going to keep challenging them. But that's how I am with my instructor. If my instructor, man, like, if you see us training, like, man, those guys, like,
they hate each other.
They hate each other or something. And, like, I feel him. He's trying to do something. I can hear like, he's really trying to get to me. But that's just how it is, man. We're done. Like, hey, good job. Like, it's just like, that respect that you have is
it is really a level of respect.
It is, and
that allows you to do that.
And he's to the point now where he probably won't ever be able to beat Professor Travis, but now he's going to get his son to beat Professor Travis's son, so the disciples will be able to carry on this level of competition, which is super cool.
I think is very important that you have mentors and you have teachers, no matter what level you're. I think that's the biggest flaws that I see with black belts, especially when they're on their own gym, is they think, well, I'm the head instructor in here. I'm the head guy. Like, I don't need to learn. And I think you should continue your education. I'm constantly watching videos. I'm constantly trying to figure out how to learn, how to grow, not just as an instructor, as a jiu-jitsu practitioner, I'm trying to be better, man. I'm trying to do things, and you can ask them, like, I'm trying to find that next phase, and if you keep it like that, you're always going to be curious.
I was just talking to one of our coaches at the gym, one of our trainers this morning about that. Something that happens in personal training, sounds like in jiu-jitsu as well, is when you find the thing that works for you, you're just like done.
Yeah.
Like, I have nothing else to learn. Huge mistake in all areas of your life, but especially in something that's, like you mentioned, that times have changed.
Yeah.
In fitness, things are constantly, new data's coming out, new science, new programs, new information is constantly being released.
Yeah.
And it's even not only from an actual fitness perspective, but also like from a business side of things as well. If you just kind of let it go, yeah, you might be on top of the world now, but 5 years, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, someone's going to come out and crush you.
We'll even look at fitness, the parallels of, like jiu-jitsu. Everybody's on their own journey, right, wrong, or indifferent. Well, it's incumbent on you to be a good trainer, to know all utilize the resources out there to make sure that your people are on the right journey. Just because it worked for you doesn't mean that that's going to work for their journey.
That's right. That is the sign of a good coach.
100%.
In any aspect, is continuing to learn for their clients, for their customer,
Not for their self-fulfilling.
not for themselves.
Yes.
Yeah. You have your side, you have your customers, you got to fulfill their goals. So you constantly got to stay on top of it. And like I tell them, don't do it. Like he said, everyone's different. I can't tell you to do it 100% like me, because it might not work out for you, right? And the way somebody else did it might not work out for me. So you learn from other people. Like we have Rosie competing for a super fight on stage next week, and like one of the things that I told her, I gave her this book to listen to, is about mental toughness, right? And really doesn't really talk much about fighting. It's really just general about life. But one of the things that I told her, look, I took that from my opponent. I saw that he was reading this, so I went ahead and read it before we fought, and I knew everything, all the information
That he was thinking.
And then I took that and I said, I got the upper hand. You see what I'm saying?
That's a competitor.
I'm
Art
competing.
of War.
Yeah.
That's the picture of a
But
book he's reading.
you have
I'm
to
gonna
do
read
the same thing if you're in fitness, if you run your personal coach, like your podcast, right? I'm sure you look for inspiration in other podcasts sometimes,
Constantly.
like that's where you close your own doors for success. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like I look at other academies, I see what they're doing, and sometimes people look at what they're doing to criticize. You got to look at to understand and to get what works for you. You see what I'm saying? I think that's big.
Where did the motivation come from to start 85? Because you were managing somewhere else. How did 85 get started?
Life struggles.
Okay.
When life puts you down, when life, puts you at the bottom, and you find ways and you try to look for, things to excel. You find people and you find connections. You find people that are in the same page as you, and the goal came from there. Because that I wanted to own an academy and be an instructor and all that, of course. That's a goal. Just like my students, sometimes they don't see their full potential. I maybe saw the potential, but I had a lot of doubts, financially, doubts, can I do this? Doubts myself, and I still do. I mean, we're like a business that has issues like any other business. And, I've came to the point where like invested so much into jiu-jitsu, like, and I saw what I was doing at other academies and how I was helping people, and, life, people, everything came together. And how can you say no, right? And if you have a gift that you can share and then they can share with someone else, that's what I want out of life. So if one day I am no longer here, they're not going to remember Jose the Black Belt. They're going to remember 85.
I agree with that.
And that's kind of the broad spectrum of how it got there. When he says life, reality is that he moved in with Coach Bo. Coach Bo lived in the back of my neighborhood. So him and Coach Bo lived together. I lived in the front of the neighborhood. I found out Professor Jose lived in the neighborhood, so I started doing privates. I was doing 3 or 4 privates a week with him.
Oh, with him. You were his student.
Okay. So when I find out Professor's in my neighborhood, I'm going to get extra lessons.
So before, because when he signed up with Travis, my professor, he did a couple lessons and he signed up over there, right? Well, he ended up going to my classes. Does that make sense?
Yes. So you were the instructor.
Yeah, I was the instructor. So he knew who I was because he was coming to my classes. But then,
and when I find out we start doing privates, they have mats in the garage. So then the three of us start training together, and then we started to compete and started to train for competitions together. And 85 legitimately started in the garage because once we came together, I knew I identified his gift early on, and I knew I didn't have the gift, but I had the ability to get his gift out there. And it was almost like it was destiny.
With our powers combined.
With destiny. Yeah. And it just came together. And it was like life happened, but the struggles in life that forced him to where he was allowed us to come together to build this.
Mm-hmm. And what's the long term, I guess, with the academy here?
Man, long term. So it's hard to focus on stuff like that, be honest with you, when we have so many of our own micro goals.
Yeah, you said that earlier. I should have known.
It's like, I mean, would we eventually want to have a huge facility, different classes going on, different black belts, where we're not necessarily teaching other classes, but we're in there, part of the, running everything. That would be the goal, where now our kid students are eventually the black belts and they're running the programs and, we're helping so many people, and we're in an area where there's not a lot of martial arts or jiu-jitsu in general around here. So, that would be the goal, take over in this area, right?
What's your micro goal right now?
Micro goal right now is to... We have, like I mentioned, we have a lot of, we have our essential program where we have beginners, and we have our leadership program. I truly believe that if I get our students here to a certain phase, like at least to a blue belt, to at least to that leadership program where you start, creating a friendship with your teammates, a community. We're a community now. You're going to want to be here, regardless of what's going on in life. Right. So my goal right now is to create that environment. Right. And so how do we create that environment? Through the classes, the structure of the classes. So my micro goals right now is monthly. Right. And it's like where our students are. And then my other micro goal is to grow where we can expand our schedule.
Okay.
Right.
Gotcha.
Span our schedule to span our classes. So, for example, we have our essential class, and eventually I want to have enough students, enough staff members that we can have an advanced and beginner class going on at the same time, instead of one class takes over the whole mat area.
Yeah. So the micro goal right now, the main tangible focus right now is expanding your schedule.
Getting people hooked.
Yeah. Okay.
Getting people hooked and committed, showing them their full potential, because we're 2.5 years in. And so we have our first blue belts, because it takes about 2.5 years, 2 years. We have already our first blue belts. So we got those guys already, they already have the bug in them. Like they're not going to quit unless something horrendous in life happens, right? Mm-hmm. Wish nothing like that happens. We got that. We're building the community. I think we're at that phase where we need a little bit more number of members.
Sure. To
be able to get to those goals. So I think maybe getting more members in.
Okay. Yeah. So members and schedule, and having a bigger schedule helps get more members as well, because I've learned from in personal training that the most important thing is being available.
Yes. We don't want to grow thin when it comes to staff members.
Well, and that's the thing. We want to grow, but we don't want to dilute the experience.
The experience, sure.
And it's an intricate balance, as you know, on all fronts. But at the same time, our goal is to reach as many people as we can, giving the best experience possible to get them not only on their martial arts journey, but to continue.
And then really try to help that person, our students, really execute their first goals. Mm-hmm. Because that's how we're gonna get them rolling. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's a momentum game.
Yeah. So like, if he comes in, like let's say Coach Lee brings in a person, like, hey, this person's coming in for class. Okay, they come in, try out the class, and they do the class, they signed up. Now our goal is to make sure we really work that person up to be able to make them durable, move them up to the next program. You see what I'm saying? And the metaphor that I use is like, a student is not just, think about a seed. You plant a seed on the ground for a fruit, right? It's just not going to grow by itself. Like signing up a member is just planting the seed. You still got to cultivate that plant and make it grow. You see what I'm saying? So that's our goal right now.
I'm going to steal that one from you.
Go ahead.
I
stole it from someone too. Everything I sold.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Sometimes it's hard to have your own original ideas. But the one of the main reasons I like doing this podcast is talking to different people, getting their opinions, and I steal a little bit of something. All people that I've talked to on this podcast, I consider my mentors. And so now I can learn a little bit of something.
I've taken some stuff from you too, so we'll call it even.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, we'll call it even.
Barter.
Yeah. I mean, you're constantly... I'm guessing you're constantly educating yourself with books and stuff like that as well. Yeah. Man, I love
trying our best.
I used to hate it because I don't like reading. I can't. Maybe that's why I'm good at jiu-jitsu, because I can constantly move and do stuff and think. But I love listening to audiobooks and podcasts. And I love that constant education. It helps a ton.
I say life comes in waves, and different waves bring different aspects with them. So, sometimes you might go through a reading wave. Yep. You might go through an audiobook wave. You might go through a podcast wave. You might go through a jiu-jitsu wave, and maybe that wave stays in your life and it continues to come, or maybe it disappears, So, life comes in waves. Different things happen to you at different times.
Absolutely.
Well, guys, I mean, I think we talked about a lot of different things today. I really appreciate your time. Is there anything that we missed or anything that we should cover before we wrap up here?
I mean, anyone that's listening to this, if they're on that, door of stepping into trying martial arts, and I'm not saying just jiu-jitsu, like this is where a lot of times, we feel a little insecure. I mean, what if, grandma wants to do taekwondo? What if she wants to do karate? Sign up for karate. Do something. Go work out. Do something, right? But if you really want to get the most out of an experience like jiu-jitsu, where you're going to be physical, you're going to go through critical thinking, you're going to learn how to breathe, you're going to learn how to move, you're going to learn so much about not just your mind, your body. Try jiu-jitsu. Right? It's so easy to look up online right now. You find a place to go try it out. And what's going to happen is two things are going to happen. You're going to be like, well, this is not for me, or this is for me. Right? And you're going to find something new that's going to intrigue you, and one day perhaps, save your life.
Yeah, the number one thing that I'm taking away from this is, you don't have to be an athlete. You don't have to be a competitor. You said a very small percentage of your students compete at all, right?
Our programs are based on family. We don't market UFC, we don't market competition, we don't market individual guys, we market family, right? So Phil, you're interested in training jiu-jitsu, cool, you come in, you try it out, you see that there's a kids class before your class, like, bring my kid in. Okay, cool. I'll bring him in. Now, next thing you know, you're training, your kid is training. Eventually, maybe your wife wants to try it out. Maybe your other son or family member wants to try it out. Now you got the whole family training, right? And the reason I say that is because sometimes people think that jiu-jitsu is still UFC, that only the tough, it's a cage fight. And it really is not, And most academies out there are making it into a family environment.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to get that message out there. That you don't have to be, yes, this is technically, I guess, a fighting sport, but you don't have to be a fight. You don't have to fight.
No, and then
we're here for betterment.
Exactly.
In general.
Yeah. I mean, and you can have your own goals and your own standards, right? A lot of times we get a parent who brings in a kid. The kid does it, and then the parent ends up signing up, and they love it. You know what I mean? So just go ahead and try it. One thing that I had a friend that got his black belt a couple years ago. I believe he was 40 years old at the age where he got it, 40 something. And he mentioned something that that was really cool. He said, like, people ask me which is the hardest belt. And most people are always going to say the black belt, right? Because it took me 10 years to get here, 15 years. But the reality, the hardest belt to get was the white belt, because it took him 40 years to start. And so if you don't start now, all you're doing is you're just
kicking the
it's
can down the road.
You know what I mean? Prolonging it. But there is no such thing as, man, I'm going to be a black belt assistant. No, just start now, and you have accomplished the hardest belt of your life right now.
As you were thinking about that, I thought you were going to say, what's the second belt? It's white
Blue.
and then what? Blue?
Blue.
I thought you were going to say the hardest one was blue, but you tricked me. I see what
I'm going to tell you
at.
a fun fact, which hopefully that's changed statistically. People say that the belt that people quit the most besides white belt is the blue belt. Because they go into jiu-jitsu and it's tough and it takes them 2 years just to get a blue belt. Like, okay, well, at least I accomplished something.
Yeah.
But, man, all those skills are going to go down the drain. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Use it or lose it.
Yeah, continue to practice your craft.
Yes.
And I like what Lee said, and maybe we can wrap up with that, is it's an art.
Mm-hmm.
It's an art that you can dive into and learn the intricacies, get in and out. It's the physical piece, the mental piece, everything. It's an art form that you really have to learn over a period of time.
An evolving art form.
Yes, that's the word I was looking for. I couldn't put that together. So jiu-jitsu is an evolving art form. So where is 85 BJJ, Instagrams, online stuff like that?
85 BJJ. Yeah. We're in the back of Spring Branch, the only jiu-jitsu academy in Spring Branch. And check us out on Instagram, reach out. We give free first class, so come again. Like Professor said, try it.
Hey, sorry. If anyone's listening to this and let's say 85 is not near your area, message us. Message us and we'll send you to a location where we think is good for you.
That's so important. Because I say the same thing. We do this right now. We have one location in Webster on the south side of Houston, right? But our goal with this podcast is to, help Houston make its way up the ladder of health and fitness as a whole. I understand that fitness and probably jiu-jitsu as well, convenience is important.
Mm-hmm.
It's everything.
Right? So if you can't come to OTG or you can't come to 85, go somewhere. Find something. We will help you. We will help you find your spot. I promise you, I've had clients move, and I've had clients with family members in other areas said, hey, let me know where it's at. I will do the due diligence to find the gym for you.
Absolutely.
I will help you find the community-driven, privately owned place where you will get the good experience. Because I can tell, you can go to a jiu-jitsu academy, you can go to their website, you can look at their social medias, and if that's a good place to send someone or not. Or you probably, and with you guys, maybe you have ties within the community.
Yeah, it's the community. Okay. Being in the community, like in fitness, you get to know everyone, and everyone has a lot of great respect for each other. So it's about that,
Yeah, well, guys, if you're in the Spring Branch area, definitely check out 85 BJJ. And if you're on the south side near Webster and you're looking to lose weight, feel great, become the greatest version of yourself, my name's Philip with OTG Fitness. And we're just helping people, live their best lives. Professor Jose, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate having me on.
Lee, Coach Lee.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time, man.
Looking forward to getting you back on the mat.
Yeah. You should come out and train with us one day.
Yeah, man. Me and Sean, we'll come by.
There we
go. We're getting Sean and Iggy next time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, we'll see you next time. And we're excited for the next one here at Fitness Destination as well.
Let's go.